One of the questions I get asked most often is, what kind of church is the Father's house? My response to that is that there's a better question. And the better question is, what does someone who follows Christ supposed to look like? What does an authentic follower of Christ look like, particularly in the 21st century? And in response to that, I point us back to Psalms chapter 1, and it tells this great story about how we are supposed to be trees that are planted by the streams of living water. And that imagery is just beautiful, right? That there's these three streams that come together in this great river, and that healthy Christians, healthy followers of Christ are planted right there by those streams, and they draw life and sustenance out of those three streams. So we here at the Father's house believe that we are nourished by each of those three streams. And one of those streams is that we are deeply historic, which means we're not trying to recover the way we did things years ago, but we are being informed by the reality of the historic church, and that how we put our trust and faith in the scriptures and in the creeds and in the reality that God is a Trinitarian God, and that out of that relationship, His Son, Jesus, who is fully God and fully man, came, and that we are touched by the graces of God through the great sacraments of water baptism and the Lord's Supper. So we are committed to the stream of being deeply historic. The second stream that we draw from is that we are truly contemplative. And by that, we make room for the presence of God through our prayer, through our silence and solitude, through our public gathering of worship, by our response to the scriptures in the reality that we are brought into the family by grace, that we are not the sum total of our accomplishments or by what we have achieved, but that it is by the grace of God that we are saved through faith. So we are truly contemplative, and we live in that ongoing conversation and contemplation, meditation with this grace, with this God that loves us unconditionally. And the third stream that we draw from is one that we call humbly charismatic. And by that, I mean that we believe that the Holy Spirit is at work in our lives today, just as He was at work in the lives of those early believers. That Jesus wants not only for us to be saved in a salvific way, but He wants us to be healed. He wants us to be healed in our souls, in our minds, emotionally, psychologically, and yes, He wants us healed physically. And so that we are humbly charismatic in that we believe that the power of the Holy Spirit as it is at work in our lives to bring about the wholeness that Jesus came to display to us through His love on the cross. So that beautiful image of being trees planted by these streams of living water, and that fertile trees draw from all three streams, that they might be able to produce the fruit of one who is a follower of Jesus Christ. So the Father's house lives in the midst of real culture, in the midst of rural communities and cities, and yet we want to stand apart, and we want people to look at us and recognize that we are distinctly different, and that there is a power in our lives that cannot be dismissed by rationalization, but that we are followers of Christ, and we are connected deeply to the history of the church. We are truly contemplative in our prayer, in our meditation, in our experience with scriptures, and we are humbly charismatic, that the power of God works through our lives. So, what kind of church is the Father's house? The better question is, what is a follower of Christ supposed to look like? And I believe we're supposed to be trees planted by the three streams that converge into one great river of life, and that we are drawing out of those resources so that we can be transformed into the image and the likeness of God and discover who we really are as children of the Most High. I just get that question so often. I thought I'd just take a few moments and share it with you. Hope it's been helpful. Pass it on to somebody. Let them hear what we really believe God's calling us to.